The unexpected encounter. The summer sun hung heavy in the sky, stretching golden fingers over the quiet streets of a small Californian town. The air shimmered above the asphalt, the heat pressing down like a weighted blanket. It was the kind of afternoon where time seemed to slow, where people moved in languid motions, seeking shade under porch awnings and inside air-conditioned diners. It was the kind of day where only the determined or the desperate remained outside. Keanu Reeves wasn't supposed to be here. His schedule had him filming in a city 2 hours away, a tightly packed itinerary that dictated every moment of his day. But something had pulled him off the beaten path, a silent nudge urging him to take the scenic route back to Los Angeles. He welcomed the solitude of the open road, his motorcycle humming beneath him as he cut through empty highways and quiet neighborhoods. There was something peaceful about being unknown, about blending into the background for just a little while longer. As he coasted down a sleepy street lined with low brick buildings and swaying trees, he noticed a small stand at the corner of an intersection. It was a simple thing, a folding table with a hand-painted sign that read Lemonade, 50C/ in wobbly, childlike letters. A bright yellow pitcher sat in the center, beaded with condensation. The boy behind the table couldn't have been older than 10, a thin-framed kid with messy brown hair and eyes that carried a weight far beyond his years. Keanu pulled to a stop a few feet away, resting one booted foot against the pavement as he studied the scene. No other customers, no shade, just the boy and his lemonade stand standing stubbornly against the heat. He watched as a car rolled past without slowing. The boy's hopeful gaze followed it for a moment before he turned back to his pitcher, stirring the liquid inside with a plastic spoon. Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen determination before, had met people who fought for their dreams with everything they had. But this was different. This was a child, standing alone in the sweltering sun, fighting a battle far bigger than himself. He swung his leg over the bike, removing his helmet as he approached. The boy straightened instantly, his small hands gripping the edge of the table. "Lemonade?" Keanu asked, offering a small smile. The boy nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. Best lemonade in town." His voice carried a mixture of confidence and hope, as if willing the words to be true. Keanu glanced at the pitcher, then at the stack of mismatched plastic cups beside it. He could see the effort in every detail. The carefully cut lemon slices floating in the liquid, the slightly uneven but neatly printed sign, the eager yet exhausted determination in the boy's face. "How much for a cup?" 50 cents, the boy replied, standing a little taller. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. "I'll take one." The boy's eyes widened. He hesitated, looking at the money as if it were something rare and precious. I don't have change for that." Keanu chuckled. "That's okay. Keep the change." The boy's mouth opened slightly, as if he wanted to protest, but instead he nodded and quickly poured a cup of lemonade. He held it out with both hands, as if presenting something far more valuable than a simple drink. Keanu took the cup and took a sip. It was sweet, a little too tart, but refreshing nonetheless. He smacked his lips playfully. "Not bad." The boy grinned, and for a moment, the exhaustion faded from his face. "You always out here selling lemonade?" Keanu asked, taking another sip. The boy nodded. "Every weekend, and after school when I can." Keanu studied him for a moment. "What's your name?" "Alex. Alex Carter." "Nice to meet you, Alex. I'm Key." He paused, catching himself. "Just a guy who likes lemonade." Alex tilted his head, studying him. "You kinda look like that guy from the movies." Keanu chuckled, shaking his head. "Nah, just a guy." Alex smiled but didn't press the matter. He took his job seriously, standing attentively by his stand as if waiting for a rush of customers that never came. Keanu glanced around. No one else seemed to be paying attention. People walked past, barely sparing the boy a second glance. "How's business today?" Keanu asked. Alex hesitated. It's okay. Something in his tone told Keanu otherwise. He set the empty cup down on the table and leaned in slightly. Why do you do this, Alex? Most kids your age are playing video games or riding bikes. Why lemonade? Alex looked down, his fingers tracing the edge of the plastic pitcher. I need to make money. Keanu's chest tightened again. For what? The boy hesitated, then took a deep breath. My mom. She's sick. The hospital bills are really expensive, and she can't work as much anymore. So, I help. Keanu felt something shift inside him. A familiar ache that came with understanding loss and hardship. He had been that kid once, the one who had to grow up too soon, the one who knew the weight of the world before he should have. Your mom knows you're out here. Alex nodded. Yeah, she says I don't have to, but I want to. She's done everything for me. It's my turn. There was something in the way he said it, something raw and unbreakable. Keanu swallowed past the lump in his throat. At that moment, an older man walking by glanced at them, shaking his head. Poor kid's been out here all week, he muttered under his breath. Breaks your heart. Keanu turned slightly. People help him out. The man scoffed. Some do. Most just walk past. Celebrities and rich folks don't care about people like us. Keanu didn't reply. He just turned back to Alex, who had lowered his head slightly, as if he had heard that sentiment one too many times. Keanu reached into his pocket again, pulling out another bill. This time, $100 one. He set it gently on the table. Alex's eyes widened. Mister, I can't. You can, Keanu said softly. And you will. Alex swallowed hard, his fingers hesitating over the bill. You're really nice. Keanu smiled, but there was something unreadable in his expression. Sometimes, life surprises us in the best way, kid. He turned and walked back to his motorcycle, slipping on his helmet as he glanced back one last time. Alex was still standing there, staring at the money as if it might disappear. As Keanu started the engine, he made a silent promise to himself. This wasn't over. Keanu's secret plan. The ride back to his house in the Hollywood Hills felt different. The hum of his motorcycle, usually a comforting rhythm beneath him, was drowned out by the echoes of a young boy's voice. She's done everything for me. It's my turn. Keanu had met many people in his life. Actors, directors, stunt coordinators, and fans who would share their stories with him in passing. But something about Alex Carter stuck to him like an unfinished scene, like a script begging for a rewrite. After parking his bike, Keanu walked into his home, tossing his keys onto the counter. The place was quiet, the kind of silence that usually helped him reset after long filming schedules. But tonight, it felt hollow. His mind was back in that small town, at that sun-baked corner where a determined little boy was fighting a battle far beyond his years. He sat down, rubbing his hands together before pulling out his phone. There was only one person he could call for something like this. Marcus, his assistant and friend for over a decade. If anyone could discreetly find out more, it was him. Keanu. What's up, man? You don't usually call this late, Marcus answered, his voice groggy but alert. Keanu leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I need you to find out everything you can about a kid named Alex Carter. 10 years old, lives in a small town outside of Leh, runs a lemonade stand. There was a pause on the other end. A lemonade stand. Keanu, are you? I'm serious. Marcus knew that tone. Keanu was the kind of guy who rarely asked for favors, but when he did, it was never for himself. All right, give me a few hours. Keanu hung up, exhaling slowly. He wasn't sure what his next move was, only that he couldn't just leave things as they were. He had more money than he knew what to do with, more fame than he had ever wanted. But none of that mattered if he wasn't using it for something good. The next morning, Marcus called back with everything Keanu needed to know. Alex Carter, 10 years old. His mom, Lily Carter, used to work as a school teacher, but she had to stop after getting diagnosed with an autoimmune disease last year. Medical bills are piling up, and she's behind on rent. There's no father in the picture. He passed away 5 years ago in a car accident. Alex has been selling lemonade for months, trying to help in any way he can. Keanu sat in silence, gripping his coffee mug a little tighter. The hospital bills, how bad are they? He asked finally. Bad, Marcus admitted. Tens of thousands in debt. She's trying to manage, but it's only getting worse. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment. He had seen struggle before, had experienced loss himself, but it never got easier to hear. He thought of his own past, the way life had taken people from him far too soon. Maybe that's why Alex's story hit so hard. He saw a reflection of himself in that kid, someone who had been forced to grow up too quickly. Marcus, I want you to take care of the hospital bills. Anonymously. Another pause. All of them. All of them. You know that's. I don't care. Marcus sighed, but there was something amused in it. All right. I'll make some calls. Keanu ran a hand through his hair. That was step one. But there was still more to do. A few hours later, he was back in that small town, this time dressed even more casually. Worn jeans, an old t-shirt, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He didn't want to draw attention. He just wanted to see Alex again. The lemonade stand was there, just as before, and Alex was already set up, pouring a fresh batch into his plastic pitcher. His shoulders sagged slightly, exhaustion evident despite the brave front he always put on. Keanu approached quietly. Still the best lemonade in town. Alex's head snapped up, and his face split into a grin. Hey, you came back. Keanu chuckled. Told you I liked lemonade. He placed a $20 bill on the table. Alex hesitated, looking between the money and Keanu, his eyes filled with something deeper than just gratitude. You're really nice, mister, the boy said. Most people don't stop. Keanu leaned against the edge of the table, watching him carefully. You ever take breaks? Alex shrugged. Sometimes, but I gotta be out here as much as I can. Keanu nodded, taking the sip of the lemonade. What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money for a little while? Alex thought for a moment. I'd take my mom to the beach. She loves the ocean. She used to take me all the time before she got sick. Keanu felt his throat tighten. He could almost picture it. Lily Carter and her son, back before life had thrown so much weight on their shoulders, laughing by the shore, building sandcastles. Maybe you'll get to do that soon, Keanu said, his voice softer than before. Alex just smiled, but there was something cautious in his expression, as if he had learned not to hope too much. Keanu knew then that fixing this situation wouldn't just be about money. It was about showing Alex that kindness still existed, that not everyone walked past without caring. The next morning, the hospital called Lily Carter. Ma'am, I don't know how to explain this, but your outstanding medical bills have been paid in full. Lily, who had been trying to figure out how to scrape together another payment, nearly dropped the phone. What? There's an anonymous donor, the nurse continued. Everything has been covered. Tears spilled down Lily's face as she clutched the phone. Who would do that? The hospital didn't have an answer. But somewhere across town, Keanu Reeves was watching from a distance, knowing that for the first time in a long while, life had surprised someone in the best way possible. And he wasn't done yet. A glimmer of hope. Lily Carter sat on the worn-out couch in their tiny living room, the phone still clutched in her trembling hands. The words from the hospital replayed in her mind, over and over, like a song she couldn't stop hearing. Your outstanding medical bills have been paid in full. She had asked them to repeat it 3 times, certain that exhaustion had made her mishear. But it was real. She buried her face in her hands, overwhelmed. Relief crashed over her like a wave, years of stress and sleepless nights unraveling all at once. For months, she had balanced on a knife's edge, trying to stretch every dollar, choosing which necessities to forego just to make the smallest dent in those towering medical bills. Now, suddenly, it was gone. Just like that. Alex walked in, sweaty from another long afternoon at his lemonade stand. He kicked off his sneakers and plopped down beside her, reaching for his usual cup of water. "Hey, Mom, you okay?" he asked, noticing the tear streaks on her face. Lily turned to him, still struggling to process the impossible. She wanted to tell them, wanted to share this miracle, but the words tangled in her throat. Instead, she pulled him into a tight hug, pressing her lips against his forehead. "Mom." She took a shaky breath. Someone paid off my hospital bills." Alex froze. His fingers clenched against her shirt as he pulled back slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's gone," she whispered. "All of it." His face scrunched in confusion. "Who?" "I don't know." Alex sat still for a moment, his 10-year-old brain working overtime to comprehend. He had spent so many days and nights worrying, counting the few dollars he made at his stand, knowing it was barely enough. And now suddenly, their biggest problem had disappeared. A slow realization crept over him. Keanu, the man who kept coming back. The one who bought lemonade even when no one else did. The one who gave him way too much money without asking for anything in return. It had to be him. His stomach flipped as he thought about it. If it was true, if Keanu had done this, why? Why would someone like him care so much? People walked past Alex's lemonade stand every day, barely noticing him. Some smiled politely, some ignored him entirely. No one had ever stopped like Keanu did. No one had looked at him the way Keanu did, like he mattered, like his fight was worth something. "I think I know who did it," Alex murmured. Lily blinked. "What?" But Alex was already scrambling to his feet, grabbing a scrap of paper from the counter. His hand shook slightly as he scribbled a message. "I know what you did. Thank you." The next morning, he placed it on the lemonade stand. Keanu showed up that afternoon, as he always did, dressed in his casual jeans and baseball cap. He took one look at the note and paused, his expression unreadable. Alex watched him, his heart pounding. He wanted to say something, but what do you say to someone who just changed your life? Keanu finally looked up, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You're a smart kid," he said. Alex grinned. "You're a bad liar." Keanu chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "Guess I am." They stood there for a moment, the summer breeze rustling the paper cup stacks on the table. "Why'd you do it?" Alex finally asked. Keanu exhaled slowly. He could have said a lot of things, that he knew what it was like to struggle, that he had lost people too, that sometimes life was unfair and cruel, and the only way to make it better was to be better. But instead, he crouched down so he was at Alex's eye level. "Because sometimes, kid," he said softly, "life surprises us in the best way." Alex felt a lump rise in his throat. He wanted to cry, but he didn't. Instead, he just nodded. Keanu stood up and reached into his pocket. This time, he didn't pull out money. He handed Alex something else, a small worn notebook. Alex furrowed his brows as he turned it over in his hands. The pages were blank. "What's this?" Keanu smiled. "Your story isn't over yet. Keep writing it." Alex held the notebook close, his fingers gripping the cover like it was something precious. For the first time, in a long time, he believed him. The revelation. Alex couldn't stop staring at the notebook. He ran his fingers over the worn edges, flipping through the blank pages, as if expecting them to fill themselves with words. Keanu had given it to him, but why? Was it just a gift, or was it something more? His heart still raced from their conversation, from the confirmation that the quiet man who kept coming back to his lemonade stand was the reason his mother could sleep easier now. He wanted to tell everyone. He wanted to run through the streets shouting, "Keanu Reeves helped us." But something told him that wasn't what Keanu wanted. He hadn't done it for attention, hadn't even admitted it outright. That made it mean even more. That night, Alex sat on the floor of their tiny apartment, the notebook open in front of him, a pencil tapping against the first page. His mother had gone to bed early, something she hadn't done in months. Without the weight of hospital bills suffocating her, she finally seemed lighter, more like the mom he remembered before she got sick. He thought about what Keanu had said. Your story isn't over yet. What did that even mean? He was just a kid selling lemonade. But Keanu made it sound like there was more waiting for him, like he wasn't just surviving. He was heading somewhere. Alex didn't know where to start, so he wrote the only thing he knew for sure. Thank you, Keanu. You changed everything. The next morning, he tore the page out and folded it neatly. He didn't know how to give it to Keanu directly, but he knew the man would come back. He always did. Sure enough, just after noon, the familiar figure appeared at the end of the street. Keanu strolled toward the lemonade stand, hands in his pockets, his signature laid-back expression masking something deeper. Alex didn't say anything at first. He just held out the folded note. Keanu raised an eyebrow as he took it. His fingers unfolded the paper carefully, eyes scanning the short message. A slow smile stretched across his face. You didn't have to do that, he said. I did, Alex replied. I needed you to know. Keanu folded the paper again and tucked it into his jacket pocket. I already knew, kid. Alex grinned. It wasn't much, but it was all he could give. That evening, something unexpected happened. Alex was watching TV while his mom cooked dinner, a rare sight in itself, since she had barely had the energy to stand in the kitchen for the past few months. The news played in the background, a generic report about Hollywood, until something caught his ear. His head snapped toward the screen. There he was. Keanu Reeves. It wasn't just a quick mention or a red carpet event. It was a full segment about him. A reporter was talking about a mystery act of kindness, an anonymous donor who had covered the massive medical bills of a struggling single mother. They didn't mention names, but Alex didn't need them to. He already knew. His heart pounded. Mom, he shouted. Lily walked into the room, wiping her hands on a dish towel. What's with the yelling? He pointed to the screen. Look at the news. She turned her attention to the TV, just as a journalist continued speaking. While the identity of the donor remains unconfirmed, many are speculating that the generous act was carried out by none other than Keanu Reeves, known for his history of quiet philanthropy. Sources say Reeves has been spotted in the small town multiple times over the last few weeks, leading many to believe that he personally connected with the family in need. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Alex turned to her, eyes wide. It's him, Mom. I knew it. He's the reason we're okay. Lily sat down slowly, her hands covering her mouth. It was too much to take in all at once. Keanu Reeves, the Keanu Reeves, hadn't just helped them. He had known them. He had been here, talking to Alex, buying lemonade, showing up like some kind of angel disguised in a baseball cap and jeans. She let out a shaky breath. Why us? Alex shrugged, but his heart swelled. Maybe because he saw us. The news report continued, showing clips of Keanu from past interviews where he had spoken about kindness, about the importance of helping others. It wasn't just something he did once in a while. It was who he was. Lily wiped at her eyes, overwhelmed. I need to thank him. Alex grinned. Get in line. The next morning, a small crowd had formed near Alex's lemonade stand. He had never seen so many people gathered in one place before. They weren't just there to buy lemonade. They were there for him. A local news crew had caught wind of the viral story and showed up, cameras rolling. A reporter crouched down in front of Alex, microphone in hand. So, Alex, she said, smiling, word is that Keanu Reeves has been your most loyal customer. Alex smirked. Guess you could say that. The reporter laughed. Do you have anything you'd like to say to him? Alex thought for a moment. He could say a lot. He could talk about the money, the medical bills, the fact that his mom could finally breathe again. But instead, he thought about the notebook Keanu had given him. "Yeah," he said. He looked straight at the camera, as if Keanu was watching on the other side. "You were right. My story isn't over yet." Somewhere, far from the cameras and the flashing lights, Keanu Reeves smiled. The story goes viral. Alex didn't understand how fast the world could change in a single day until it happened to him. One moment, he was just a kid selling lemonade on a quiet street, and the next, his name was everywhere, his story plastered across TV screens, news websites, and social media. It was surreal. It started small. The local news station had covered the story first, airing the segment about Keanu's kindness and Alex's determination. But then, someone posted a clip online. From there, it spread like wildfire. By the time Alex woke up the next morning, his face was all over the internet. His lemonade stand had become a symbol of resilience, of hope, of the simple yet profound impact of kindness. And at the center of it all was Keanu Reeves, the man who had seen a struggling kid on a street corner and quietly decided to change his life. People across the world were talking about it. Tweets, Instagram posts, Facebook shares. Everyone had something to say. Keanu strikes again. One headline read, "The Hollywood star who refuses to stop being a good human." Another article called it, "The Lemonade Stand Miracle." It wasn't just words either. People started donating. A crowdfunding page was set up overnight, and within hours, it had raised tens of thousands of dollars for Alex and his mom. Strangers left messages of encouragement, praising Alex's determination, and thanking Keanu for proving that real kindness still existed in the world. Lily could barely process it all. She sat on their small couch, staring at the screen of her phone in disbelief as donation notifications kept popping up. Just days ago, she had been rationing groceries, wondering how to pay rent. Now, it was like the entire world had wrapped them in a giant, unexpected embrace. "Mom," Alex said softly, watching her from the doorway. She turned, her eyes still glossy with emotion. "Honey, do you realize what's happening?" Alex nodded, but he still felt like he was dreaming. "Yeah, I think we just went viral." He was right. People weren't just donating. They were showing up. By noon, a line had formed at his lemonade stand, stretching down the block. People from all over the town, and even from out of town, came to support him, not just because of Keanu's story, but because they believed in what he had done. They wanted to be part of it. A woman in a business suit bent down to hand Alex a $5 bill. "You're an inspiration, sweetheart," she said, smiling warmly. "Never stop believing in kindness." An older man, who had initially doubted that celebrities cared about regular folks, ordered 6 cups of lemonade and patted Alex on the shoulder. "You proved me wrong, kid." And I've never been happier to admit it. Even local businesses took notice. A cafe owner walked up to Lily with an envelope, insisting that her next month's rent had already been taken care of. "Consider it a thank you for raising a kid with such a big heart," she said. Lily didn't know what to say. All she could do was nod, holding back the lump in her throat. Amid all the commotion, there was one person Alex hadn't seen yet. Keanu. He had expected him to stop by, maybe give one of his signature small nods, and buy another overpriced cup of lemonade just to be nice. But he was nowhere to be found. Alex wasn't surprised, though. He had learned enough about Keanu to know that he didn't do things for attention. He had probably seen the story go viral and quietly stepped out of the spotlight. Still, Alex wanted to find a way to thank him. Really thank him. That night, after the crowd had finally thinned out and the town settled back into its normal rhythm, Alex sat on his bed with the notebook Keanu had given him. Instead of a letter this time, he wrote something different. A story. It wasn't long, and it wasn't complicated. Just a simple story about a boy who sold lemonade on the side of the road, hoping to save his mom, and a man who stopped to buy a cup. At the end, he wrote a single sentence. Sometimes life surprises us in the best way. The next morning, he slipped the notebook into an envelope with Keanu's name on it and handed it to the cafe owner, who had a friend who had a friend who might be able to get it to him. And then, Alex went back to doing what he always did, selling lemonade. Only this time, he wasn't just trying to make money. He was spreading something bigger. The stand had become more than just a place to buy a drink. It was a symbol now, a reminder of the simple power of human kindness. And somewhere, far away from the cameras and the headlines, Keanu Reeves sat in his quiet home, flipping through the notebook. When he reached the last sentence, he smiled. And he knew, without a doubt, that Alex's story was only just beginning. A dream come true. A week had passed since the world had discovered Alex's story, and life had shifted in ways he never could have imagined. His lemonade stand, once a quiet corner operation, had become a symbol of resilience and hope. People still came, not just to buy lemonade, but to share their own stories, to thank him for reminding them that kindness still existed in the world. Yet, through all of it, Alex remained the same. He still carefully squeezed lemons in his small kitchen, still mixed the sugar and water with the same determination, and still stood behind his stand, greeting every customer with the same bright enthusiasm. The only difference now was that, for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just fighting to survive, he was living. Then, one morning, an envelope arrived at his front door. It was thicker than most, its weight pressing against his palm as he turned it over, looking for a sender's name. There wasn't one, just his name, neatly written in small, familiar handwriting. He carefully tore it open, pulling out a set of papers. His eyes scanned the words, his brain struggling to process what he was looking at. His heart started pounding. "Mom," he yelled, running into the kitchen. Lily turned from the stove, startled. "What's wrong?" Alex held up the papers. "It's from Keanu." Her breath caught. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and took the papers, her eyes widening as she read. Her fingers trembled as she turned the pages. "Plane tickets," she murmured. "Hotel reservations, studio passes." She looked at her son, disbelief shining in her tired eyes. "He wants us to come to Los Angeles." Alex was practically bouncing. "He said he wants me to see something. He got us tickets to visit the set of his new movie." Lily covered her mouth, shaking her head. It didn't make sense. Why would he do this? He had already done so much. But then again, maybe that was just who Keanu was. A week later, they were on a plane for the first time in their lives. Alex spent the entire flight pressing his face against the window, watching the clouds roll beneath them like waves on an endless ocean. His mother, though still overwhelmed, couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, she looked happy. When they landed, a driver was waiting for them. It was surreal, stepping into a sleek black car that whisked them through the streets of Los Angeles. The city was huge, nothing like their quiet little town. Towering buildings stretched toward the sky, palm trees lined the streets, and the air buzzed with energy. They arrived at the movie studio, where a woman with a headset greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome, Alex. We've been expecting you." Alex blinked. "You have?" She laughed. "Oh yeah. Keanu's been talking about you for weeks." His stomach did a weird flip. The idea that Keanu Reeves had been telling people about him felt like something out of a dream. They were led through winding hallways, past giant sets and prop rooms filled with incredible costumes and weapons from different movies. Alex's eyes were wide as he took everything in. It was like stepping into another world. Then they turned a corner, and there he was. Keanu stood near one of the sets, dressed in a leather jacket and holding a prop gun. His face lit up the moment he saw them. "Alex," he called, grinning. Alex ran the last few steps, skidding to a stop in front of him. "You actually got us here." Keanu laughed. "Told you, didn't I?" Lily approached more slowly, still overwhelmed. "Mr. Reeves, I don't even know what to say." Keanu's expression softened. Just Keanu. And you don't have to say anything. I'm just glad you're here. Alex was still buzzing with excitement. So what are we doing? Do I get to be in a movie or something? Keanu chuckled. Not quite, but he gestured for them to follow. Come on. There's something I want to show you. They walked through the massive soundstage until they reached a smaller set, a street corner built to look like an ordinary town. At first, Alex didn't understand. Then he saw it. His lemonade stand. Or at least, an exact replica of it. He froze, his heart slamming against his ribs. Every detail was there. The wobbly sign, the mismatched cups, even the little plastic pitcher. Keanu crouched next to him. What do you think? Alex swallowed hard. This is mine. Keanu nodded. I told the studio your story, and they thought it should be part of the movie. Alex's head snapped toward him. A movie. Keanu smiled. It won't be exactly the same, but we're putting a little scene in about a boy with a lemonade stand. Something small, but important. And he glanced at Lily. I wanted you both to be here when we filmed it. Lily pressed a hand to her chest. Keanu, this is too much. He shook his head. No, it's not. It's just a way to show that your story matters. Alex felt a lump in his throat. He had never thought of himself as someone special. He had just been doing what he had to do, what anyone would do for the people they loved. But now, standing in the middle of a movie set, his story about perseverance and kindness was being told to the world. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. You still think you're just a kid selling lemonade? Alex looked up at him, the weight of everything settling in. No, he said, smiling. I think I'm something more. And for the first time in his life, he truly believed it. The legacy of kindness. Years passed, but Alex Carter never forgot the summer that changed his life. It had started with a lemonade stand, a quiet corner where he had fought to make a difference in the only way he knew how. It had turned into something so much bigger, an unexpected encounter, an act of kindness that had sent ripples through the world. Now, at 17, Alex stood in a place that once felt like a distant dream. The bustling streets of Los Angeles surrounded him, the towering buildings and flashing billboards no longer overwhelming but familiar. He had been here before, years ago, when Keanu Reeves had invited him and his mother to the set of his movie. That moment had been a turning point, but it wasn't the end of his story. It had only been the beginning. As he walked through the doors of a spacious event hall, he adjusted the collar of his shirt, nerves bubbling beneath his skin. His mother, standing beside him, gave his arm a reassuring squeeze. You've got this, she whispered. Alex took a deep breath. He had given speeches before, small ones, mostly at schools and charity events. But this was different. This was the biggest moment of his life so far. The doors opened, and a wave of applause filled the air. He stepped onto the stage, momentarily blinded by the bright lights. The crowd before him was massive. Philanthropists, business owners, celebrities, and regular people who had been touched by his journey. Behind him, a massive banner displayed the name of his nonprofit organization, the Lemonade Stand Foundation. It had started as an idea, something Keanu had planted in his mind when he told him, "Your story isn't over yet." Over the years, Alex had worked tirelessly to turn his small lemonade stand into something greater. At first, it was just about helping his mom. But once their lives had stabilized, once Lily had fully recovered and gotten back on her feet, Alex realized there were so many others still struggling. Kids like him, parents like his mom, families barely holding on. So he did something about it. The Lemonade Stand Foundation had begun as a grassroots effort, a way to help families in need. It had started with a few small donations, a couple of fundraisers. But then, people from around the world had joined in. Schools had set up their own lemonade stands to raise money. Businesses had pitched in. And slowly it had grown into something extraordinary. Now, standing on this stage, Alex looked out at the people who had come to support his cause, and he felt the weight of everything that had led him here. He took a deep breath and spoke. 7 years ago, I was just a kid on a street corner, selling lemonade because I thought it was the only way I could help my mom. I didn't know how much of a difference one small act could make. But then, someone stopped. Someone saw me. His eyes scanned the room, and for a brief moment, he found him. Keanu Reeves sat near the front, dressed in his usual simple black attire, a small smile on his face. He didn't like the attention, but he had come anyway, just as he always did. Alex continued. That summer, I learned something. Kindness isn't about how much money you have. It's about showing up. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, and deciding that their struggles matter. That's why I started this foundation. So no kid ever has to feel invisible, so no family has to fight alone. A wave of applause erupted, but Alex wasn't finished. This foundation isn't just mine. It belongs to every person who's ever given a little extra when they didn't have to. To every kid who stood outside on a hot summer day, selling lemonade not for themselves, but for someone they love. It belongs to people like Keanu, who remind us that even the smallest gestures can change lives. Keanu lowered his head slightly, shaking it with a humble smile as the audience clapped. Alex smiled, his chest tightening with emotion. So, to anyone out there who thinks they're too small to make a difference, trust me, you're not. The applause was deafening. As Alex stepped off the stage, Keanu met him halfway. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, before Keanu pulled him into a hug. You've done good, kid, Keanu said, his voice gruff with emotion. Alex grinned. Guess I had a pretty good role model. Keanu chuckled. Nah, you did this on your own. I just bought some lemonade. They laughed, but they both knew it was so much more than that. Later that evening, as the event wrapped up and people filtered out, Alex found a quiet moment to sit at one of the tables, his heart still racing. His mom sat beside him, nudging him gently. Told you you had this, she said with a wink. Alex chuckled. Yeah. She took his hand. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. You built something real. Something that's going to outlast all of us. Alex looked down at the foundation's logo printed on the event program. A simple lemonade stand, just like the one he had all those years ago. For a long time, he had thought of himself as just a kid selling drinks on the sidewalk. Now he knew better. He wasn't just a kid anymore. He was part of something bigger. And somewhere, in another small town, on another sunlit street corner, a kid would set up their own lemonade stand, not just to make money, but to make a difference. Because kindness, once given, never truly ends. It grows.